Hello, lifelong learners. Welcome to our online chat here. So we appreciate people who have called in, and those of you who haven't yet, feel free to come online and chat with us a little bit. We thought we'd start just to kind of break the ice a little bit here by answering a couple of questions posed by Elizabeth, who asked, first of all, what were our suggestions about how you get students really in touch with their passions? And that's an easy thing to say, but kind of an abstract concept. I'll present a couple, and then maybe Mark will also. There's an exercise I've done with students before, and I call it clarity. And the thing about passion is you can't overthink it. In fact, as Mark probably will comment in just a minute, sometimes you have to start doing stuff, and then you find out what your passions are. But the exercise called clarity, what you might do with your students is break them into pairs. And with clarity, it's kind of like free association out loud. You have one student ask a question, and the other student keeps answering it again and again. The objective in answering multiple times is for spontaneity and not overthink things. So the first question you might give the students in pairs is, what really excites you in life? That's one student asking that, and the other one keeps answering that. They might say running, they might say avoiding homework, they might say the color purple. And as their responses continue to go on, their creativity keeps increasing. So you might make up a series of questions like that. Another one might be, what are you passionate about? What do you love doing? What's fun to do? What do you look forward to do? So again, the point of this exercise is to have students answer so many times that they start to not overthink things. And then later talk about what the answers are. They kind of look back in a metacognitive way and examine their answers. And so a lot of times passions and things will start to emerge. One other idea, and then I'll let Mark add a few here too, is anything you can do with the whole Strength Finder movement. The whole purpose of Strength Finder is to help students and adults find their passion. And there is a Strength Finder, and I think we put this resource online. There's a Strength Finder for kids too, where they can start contemplating what they're really good at. We know from the research, things that you enjoy doing, that you're good at, that you're highly competent at, are usually related to your passion. Mark, some stuff to add to that?
Sure. I think it's important to realize that passion exploration is a journey. It's not a destination. Passions will ebb and flow. I know in my life they certainly have. But one of the things that I found most meaningful and most helpful is making sure that I'm getting in the game. And not just getting in the game, but getting in new games and navigating between worlds. We talked a lot about this, but there's not a better way for self-discovery than putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, new situations, situations that are both stimulating to you, exciting to you, things that you're passionate about, but also in foreign worlds. And I use that both figuratively and literally, because if you put yourself in new worlds, you're going to find out new things about yourself. I think there's also another element of making sure that you use your network of support to get feedback. Understand that there's only one person really who's going to know your passion and purpose, but you may learn some things about yourself by dialoguing with people, by getting commentary about your behaviors in certain situations. But again, there's nothing like getting in the zone, so to speak. And then probably finally, I think we talk about the river guide and having mentors, and I think there's not a better feedback mechanism to have self-exploration opportunities and good feedback than talking to somebody who you really trust. And they may help individuals, whether they be students or what have you, in unveiling things and thought processes that the student might not otherwise do.
Great. Yeah. Another word about this getting in the game that Mark talks a lot about here, and it's kind of backwards. So what we're saying, maybe this is just saying what you said in a different way, is sometimes it's best to take kind of a design thinking approach where you have your students do something. Maybe they enter the world of work. Maybe they take a part-time job. Maybe they mentor someone else. And then they find out if they're passionate about this. It's not all just pre-thinking, then doing. Sometimes it's doing and then thinking about it later.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I've got a 4-year-old son, and he's a big Lego kid, and as many kids are. And as he sits down and constructs things, yes, hi, Jack, and constructs things, part of the process for him is, once he's finished it, is to break it. And part of design thinking is that you create some ideas around concept, around ideas, around whatever it is you're trying to deliver. you separate from the group, and then you get back together and you pick it apart and you break it down. And then what happens is that you get a whole new creative exploration opportunity to build something new that may be better and greater.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And we have one other question from Elizabeth before we open things up here, and she I think Mark had some questions about how do you get going on this doing a startup.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was a couple of teacher commentary in one of the segments where some of the students had difficulty deciding what type of project they would want to get into. And the teacher really left it up to the students to do some level of maybe difficult thinking and difficult situation to come up with what they needed to do, and they come back to the teacher and say, well, we don't know what we want to do. But the reality is you got to let people find out about themselves. And I think that if you say, hey, look, we're going to do a startup business, one of the things that's pretty consistent about entrepreneurs and people with entrepreneurial thinking is that they're passionate about whatever they're doing. Like we're passionate about trying to infuse some level of entrepreneurial habit into the educational system. It's why we're sitting here. Same thing with students. And part of that can be hurried along by observing when these kids get in the zone, whether it's playing a sport or during art projects or some technology event or what have you, and then giving them some feedback on, hey, have you thought about starting a business there? But to me, it's about getting something they're passionate about.
So it's related to the first thing we're talking about.
It's exactly related to what we're talking about.
Okay, good. Well, enough of our introductory blabbing. Let's, Stacy, do we open up now? Or
let's open up.
How do we do this? Help us out. Patrick?
If anybody wants to ask a question,
Yeah.
you
Can we
guys.
hear everybody? The speaker's on, just a second.
So can they can both ask a question or type a question, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And if
Type
you
or
also have
ask
a
away.
webcam,
Talking. Mark Nelson's talking.
Who do we have online? Stacy, can you read those? Do you know?
Elizabeth and Nicolau.
Elizabeth, Nicolau. We probably butchered both their names, haven't we?
Yeah.
Are you having trouble, or?
Elizabeth said, "Thank you. That was great on your explanation of all of her questions." Yeah.
How many people are on there's three? Two? Okay.
I'm glad that was helpful, Elizabeth. Maybe we can continue. If you want to write in other ideas about finding passion. Another thing I've done on this whole finding passion idea is I've done with students what I call a life roadmap, where they represent three things on their roadmap: where they are now in their lives, and that can be lots of different things. Where they are now with their studies, where they are now with their physical being, where they are now with their social relationships, where they are now as a learner. And then, so it can be, and please, if you do this activity, let students do it in any way they want. Pictures, words, scribbles. So they represent, first of all, in any way they want where they are now. Then the other end of the road is where they'd like to be. And where they'd like to be when? Well, it could be a year from now, it could be 5 years from now. Let them choose. And then the third step would be to put, you could call them barriers or things to overcome or things to deal with as they go along. So it really helps students to see what their passions are, what things, realistic kind of things you're going to have to deal with to get there. And I call it kind of a personal roadmap. So add that to your collection maybe too. So what Stacy and Patrick are doing is checking on who's online now and making sure we're connected. We might kind of chat up our next course too. As Mark and I look about developing a next course, I think it's going to probably be a lot on implementation of the doing part.
The equipping, yeah.
Equipping is the term Mark uses, because a lot of the questions we're getting now from people is, we love your ideas, great idea, makes sense. Now give us some tools to equip us to move forward with these ideas.
Well, and this module here is probably one of the greatest opportunities, because as you look at building a life portfolio, hopefully passionately for each or at least most of the buckets, we want to provide some tools on doing some assessment on where you might be light in a bucket or an element, whatever you want to call it, a field, and where you might be heavy so that you can do some rebalancing and create a strategy, kind of a roadmap, a life positioning system to fill those buckets where they may be a little shy, because an unbalanced life is going to be difficult to maintain if you're too focused on your career, if you're not too focused on whatever social endeavors, things are going to get out of whack. And we are really trying to promote a life positioning system that will be in harmony. And I think this is going to be a great course to develop some assessment tools.
Yes, good. How do you fill the buckets? Huh?
First of all, how do you measure the buckets? And second of all, how do you fill them will be key. So one is really kind of a quantitative measuring tool, and the other one is a qualitative action plan in order to change the measurements in the future.
What are you, a professor or something?
Oh, yeah, I've been hanging around with you too long.
So we got any thing online here? Okay. Oh, wait a minute more here, and then we'll.
Want to talk about the final week and
Yeah.
wrapping it up?
Well, the final week is coming, and what we're going to do in the final week is try to kind of tie things together. We have some nice reviews. It's a good time, I think, too, Stacy, in that final week, if you want to look back over the modules and say, look, you said this in Module 2, I don't understand how it relates to Module 4. Let us know, because this is your time to synthesize some of these ideas. And if you would give us some feedback about how things fit, refer back to previous modules, that'd be great. Or if you have some insights about now, what's happened to me as I've learned about this whole topic is as I get into other areas or other modules, it gives me insights about previous ones.
Right.
Now, you probably have the insights already, but it's helped me to kind of think more holistically, Mark.
Well, if you go back to the beginning, and I'm probably going to kind of stomp all over our tying up session, but we started with relevant purpose, awakening relevant purpose, which is basically unleashing the things that are really exciting and purposeful to you, and then creating some level of circumstance so that it's relevant to the external world, and somebody's willing to pay some level of social, emotional, financial currency for it. And then we moved into Economic Unit 1, which is really the engine of practicality, which is where you're developing external resources, external skill sets, external experiences that are going to be hopefully procured by somebody else. So that's really one of the key economic elements. And then the life portfolio really brings it all back together in a holistic way. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, because fundamentally this is an area where we want our spiritual and our internal worlds to be abundant, and we want our external and material and physical worlds to be abundant so that we can be of service.
Then we jumped into risk. What are the risks that you're going to need to take to get there?
You need to be adaptable and agile.
Yeah, and the adaptability and agility, which goes, I think, hand in hand with risk. So enough of our previewing.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you tune in for the final session. Patrick?
Elizabeth asked, she said that she thinks that the new course ideas sound great, and she thinks that there are many of us who would like to join that. She can't wait. And she also said, please let your SSU student teachers know when you start that up.
Great idea. Great idea. Okay, I hope you heard Patrick. Elizabeth, he was kind of repeating what Elizabeth was giving us some input on. I think it's
pre-service. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
And pre-service.
All right. We want to take and integrate a lot of this stuff into our teacher education program. So that's a great suggestion from Elizabeth, and we'll stay on that one.
Well, we want this to be a pilot program that can be modeled across the country and across the world, because it's going to be absolutely mandatory and necessary if our students are going to flourish in their lifetimes, both not just economically, but again, spiritually and purposefully and socially and philanthropically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks to others that are watching and tuning it in. And we'll see you online.